Imagine a world where the rules of tomorrow were written today, but not by politicians in suits or tech CEOs behind closed doors. Instead, they were drawn up by a global coalition that realized AI was no longer a tool we built, but the very architecture of our society. The shift isn't just about safety, it's about survival, sovereignty, and who gets to define the future. Today, we break down the massive regulatory earthquake sweeping across governments in 2026. You will learn how three distinct legal frameworks are colliding, why the United States is taking a surprisingly aggressive deregulatory stance, while Europe braces for impact, and what this means for your daily life when algorithms decide everything from your credit score to your criminal sentence. This is the story of the new age of governance, and you won't want to miss it. The landscape we are seeing right now in 2026 was not always this fractured. Just a few years ago, there was a unified front where every major nation agreed that AI needed strict guardrails before it could be unleashed. But then something shifted. By early 2025, the political winds changed dramatically, particularly in the United States. Under the new administration, Executive Order 14,179 didn't just tweak the rules, it fundamentally rewired them. This order prioritized American global leadership by actively removing constraints that had held back domestic innovation for decades. It wasn't a failure of oversight. It was a strategic pivot to ensure the U.S. remained the undisputed engine of technological advancement. Contrast this with Europe, where the approach has been far more structural and institutional. The EU AI Act is not merely a list of do's and don'ts. It is a complete overhaul of regulatory architecture. It empowers existing bodies like the European Commission with new enforcement powers and establishes entirely new institutions, including the AI Board and the AI Office, dedicated solely to managing this crisis. While the U.S. is racing forward with speed and flexibility, Europe is building walls of protection. This divergence creates a fascinating geopolitical chessboard where American companies are free to innovate without immediate friction, but face potential trade barriers from a continent that views unregulated high-risk systems as an existential threat. Let's dive deeper into the European fortress. The AI Act is cross-sectoral, meaning it doesn't just look at healthcare or finance in isolation. It sees how these industries interact and amplifies risk across the board. This holistic view forces companies to consider the ripple effects of their code long before deployment. For instance, a facial recognition system used for public safety isn't evaluated on its accuracy alone, but on its societal impact within specific neighborhoods, ensuring that bias doesn't become systemic. The creation of the AI Board is particularly interesting because it moves beyond reactive enforcement to proactive strategy. This body doesn't wait for a scandal before stepping in. They anticipate where technology could go wrong and build safeguards into the supply chain itself. Meanwhile, member states retain some autonomy but within strict boundaries set by Brussels. This creates a tiered system of compliance that is incredibly robust. For developers targeting the European market, this means you cannot ship an unverified model. You need documentation, human oversight, and often continuous monitoring. It's a high-bar environment designed to protect citizens from being treated as data points in a black box. The result? A digital society where privacy is woven into the fabric of every algorithm, making it nearly impossible for corporations to monetize user behavior without consent or transparency. Now let's talk about what happens when these regulations meet the human element. The core tension driving this entire regulatory explosion is trust, specifically regarding explainable artificial intelligence or XAI. In high-stakes scenarios like criminal justice sentencing, the stakes are literally life and liberty. If an algorithm suggests a 20-year sentence for someone who might be innocent, how does that decision get challenged? The new regulations demand that in these critical areas, the logic behind every recommendation must be transparent and auditable. You cannot have a black box deciding your fate. This requirement has forced legal systems to adopt new forms of accountability where the reasoning process is as important as the final outcome. We are seeing courts begin to require developers to provide detailed logs showing how variables like age, location, or past behavior influence the prediction. This transparency isn't just for the public. It's a shield for both the system and the accused. However, this push for openness has its own challenges. Critics argue that full transparency could expose proprietary trade secrets, potentially stifling innovation further. The balance is delicate. If every line of code explaining a loan denial or a job rejection becomes public record, does it encourage bad actors to reverse engineer vulnerabilities? This is the debate playing out in 2026. Governments are trying to find a middle ground where accountability doesn't become anarchy, ensuring that while we can question the outcome, we don't dismantle the engine of progress entirely. So what does all this mean for you? It means your digital footprint is now monitored under a much stricter lens than ever before. Whether you are shopping online, applying for a loan, or interacting with city services, the algorithms powering those decisions are subject to rigorous scrutiny. If something feels off, there is actually a legal framework to appeal it, provided you know where to look. For businesses and creators, this era demands agility. You cannot rely on old shortcuts where data collection was assumed to be permissible. Every interaction needs justification. Every dataset needs provenance. It's an opportunity to build trust from the ground up rather than fighting battles later. For consumers, it means greater privacy protections, but also a potentially slower adoption of new conveniences until they meet safety standards. The most surprising insight is that this regulatory shift is accelerating faster in certain sectors than others. High-risk areas like healthcare and justice are moving first, while lower-stakes applications will follow over the next few years as the legal precedents set by the AI board and similar bodies solidify. The message is clear. The era of unchecked algorithmic power is over. We have entered an age where technology serves humanity, not the other way around. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep watching because this story is only just getting started.